come in, and mind the low doorway. The fire has been waiting for you. There is a book I keep apart from all the others, up there on the highest shelf, where the candlelight only barely reaches. I take it down so rarely. Not because it is fragile, though it is, but because, unlike every other book in this old library, this one has never once spoken to me. Here, let me turn a page for you. Do you see? A looping, flowing script written in a careful hand by someone long dead, and not a single word of it can be read. Not by me, not by anyone. Strange plants that grow in no garden on this earth. Little suns, little stars. Small figures bathing in green pools. For 600 years, every reader who has opened this book has closed it again, no wiser than before. Tonight, let me tell you its story. A gentle mystery to carry you down into sleep. But first, settle yourself. There is no hurry here, none at all. Find the softest place to rest your head, and let your shoulders come down from wherever the day has been holding them. That's it. If the light where you are is still bright, let it go dim now, softer and lower, until it is only a warm glow at the edges of things. The way my library looks tonight, all shadow and candle flame, the fire breathing quietly in the hearth. You have come a long way to sit with me, and I am so glad you are here. There is nothing you need to do now, nothing to remember, nothing to hold on to. I will keep the story safe for you, every word of it, and I will carry it gently, whether you follow me all the way to the end or drift off somewhere in the middle. And truly, if sleep comes to take you before the tale is done, let it. You will miss nothing that matters. This is not a story with a locked door at the end that you must stay awake to open. It is a slow walk through candlelit rooms, and you may fall asleep in any of them. The book will still be here. I will still be here. So let your breathing slow, my dear friend, to match the turning of the pages, and let me begin. Let us start, not with where the book came from, nor with the many hands that have held it, but simply with the book itself. For it is unlike anything else in all my shelves, and I should like you to see it as I see it, here in the low gold light. It is not a large book. You could hold it comfortably in your two hands, the way you might hold a sleeping cat. Its pages are made of vellum, soft calfskin, scraped and smoothed and dried, the same patient material on which the monks of old copied their gospels and their prayers. There are a little more than 200 pages, though some, we think, have gone missing across the long centuries, slipped away quietly the way pages do. The vellum has gone the warm color of weak tea, and in places you can still see the faint freckles and creases of the animal it once was. The writing runs across these pages in a single flowing hand, looping and looping, curl after gentle curl, as though whoever wrote it knew their letters so well that the pen never had to pause. It does not look like the work of someone struggling. It looks confident, unhurried, almost graceful. And that, my friend, is the very first of its many riddles. For all its confidence, no one has ever been able to read a single word of it. The letters themselves are strange. Some look almost familiar, like cousins of letters you might know, and others look like nothing at all. Little figures with tails and loops that belong to no alphabet anyone has ever found. Scholars have counted them, sorted them, given them tidy names, and still they will not resolve into meaning. They gave the writing a nickname, the way you name a stray animal you cannot quite tame. They call it Voynich, and we shall come in time to why. And then there are the pictures. Oh, the pictures! Much of the book is filled with plants, great sprawling drawings of flowers and roots and leaves, painted in soft blues and greens and dusty reds. But here is the curious thing. If you go looking for these plants in any meadow or forest or garden, you will not find them. Their leaves belong to one flower, and their roots to another. Their blossoms grow in impossible ways. They look like plants remembered in a dream, half right and half invented. And no one can say with certainty what a single one of them is meant to be. Turn a little further, and the plants give way to the heavens. Great circular diagrams, wheel within wheel, scattered with suns and moons and rings of tiny stars, and figures that seem to stand for the signs we still know: the fish, the bull, the archer. It has the look of astronomy, or perhaps of astrology, the two being tangled together in the old days. But what it is trying to tell us, no one knows. And then, stranger still, a section of small bathing figures, dozens of little people resting in green pools and winding channels of water, as though the book had wandered from the stars down into some quiet, secret spa. And a section of jars and roots, like a book of remedies, and pages of nothing but text, dense paragraphs of that looping, unreadable hand, with little stars drawn along the margins as if to mark each line as something worth remembering. It has, in short, the shape of a book that ought to mean something. It is organized. It has sections, as a proper book of knowledge should. Someone made it with great care, and you feel this holding it. Someone meant something by it. And yet, it stays silent. Every reader for 600 years has felt that same gentle pull, that sense of a meaning just beyond the fingertips, and every reader has come away empty-handed. Rest here a moment with that thought. A book made entirely of questions. Is it not a strange and lovely thing? Now, my friend, you may be wondering, if we cannot read a word of it, can we know anything for certain? And the answer is yes, a little, not much, but a little. And what little we know is quietly reassuring, so let me lay it before you. For a long time, the book's age was only a guess. Scholars would look at the shapes of the letters, the style of the drawings, the fashion of the little figures' hair and clothing, and from these gentle clues they would murmur estimates. Perhaps the 15th century, perhaps the 16th, perhaps later still. It was the sort of guessing that learned people loved to argue over by candlelight, and for centuries no one could do better than argue. But then, not so very long ago, in our own modern age, they found a way to ask the book its age directly, or rather, to ask the skin it was written on. For every living thing, while it lives, drinks in a faint and particular trace of the world around it, and when it dies, that trace begins, ever so slowly, to fade. And if you measure how much has faded, you can count backward, like reading the rings of a felled tree, to the year the creature lived and died. So they took the very smallest slivers from the edges of a few pages, barely more than dust, and they measured, and the calfskin gave up its secret gently. The animals whose skins became these pages had lived and died in the early years of the 1400s, somewhere in the span between roughly 1404 and 1438. 600 years ago, near enough. The vellum, at least, does not lie. Now, and here I must be honest with you, as I always am, knowing when the pages were made is not quite the same as knowing when the words were written upon them. A careful writer might have kept blank vellum for years before setting pen to it, but the ink and the pictures seem to belong to the pages, drawn while the skin was still fresh, and so most who study it are content to say, this is a book of the early 15th century, a book from the tail end of the medieval world, made when much of Europe still lit its evenings with tallow and rushlight, as I light mine with candle and hearth. We can guess a little more, softly. The style of the drawings, the way the figures are shaped, the little architectural touches hidden in one of the star diagrams. These hint at Central Europe, at the lands that would become Germany and Italy and the countries between. But it is only a hint. The book carries no name of its maker, no city, no date written plainly in a corner the way a proud craftsman might sign his work. Whoever made it either did not wish to be known or simply did not think to tell us. And across 600 years, the difference between those two has worn away to nothing. And so we are left with a small, warm circle of certainty in a great darkness. We know the book is real, not some modern trick, for the vellum is truly old. We know roughly when it was born. We know the patient labor that went into it, the preparing of the skins, the mixing of the inks, the steady hand that looped its way across page after page after page, never faltering, never explaining. But who held that pen? Why did they write? What did they believe they were setting down? A great work of medicine, a private book of secrets, a game, a devotion, a dream. That, my friend, the book will not say. It keeps its maker as gently and completely as the earth keeps those who are long buried, their names softened away by time. I find, strangely, that I do not mind. There is a kind of peace in it. A craftsman from 600 years ago, still quietly present in every loop of ink, and yet asking nothing of us, needing nothing, simply being there on the highest shelf. We will never know their face, but we turn their pages, and in a small way, we keep them company. Rest now. When you are ready, or when I am, and you have drifted, we will follow the book out of the workshop where it was born, and into the strange and winding journey of the hands that carried it down the centuries. The candle has burned a little lower. Good. That is exactly as it should be. Let me go on. For the first 200 years of its life, my friend, the book simply vanishes. This is not so unusual, mind you. Think of how many quiet years a book can pass through, sitting on a shelf, packed in a chest, carried in a saddlebag from one town to another, read once and then forgotten, dusted perhaps at spring cleaning, and set back in its place. Most of a book's life is spent in silence, unrecorded, and the manuscript we are following kept that silence more completely than most. From the workshop, where it was born in the early 1400s, it slips out of all memory, and we do not glimpse it again for the better part of 2 centuries. When it does surface, it surfaces in a place worthy of it, in the strange and glittering court of an emperor. His name was Rudolph, the second of that name, and he ruled a great swathe of Central Europe from the city of Prague. Now, Rudolph was not much interested in the ordinary business of ruling, the treaties and the taxes and the tedious quarrels of princes. His heart lay elsewhere, in wonders. He filled his castle with the most curious things his agents could gather from across the world. Clocks that moved of their own accord, strange stones, stuffed creatures, paintings, mechanical marvels, and the works of astrologers and alchemists who promised to unlock the hidden workings of nature. His great collection was famous throughout Europe. A whole castle turned into a cabinet of curiosities, presided over by a quiet, melancholy, wonder-hungry emperor. Into this court, sometime around the year 1600, our little book made its way, and the story that came with it, the story whispered at Rudolph's court, was a dazzling one. They said the book had been written by a great English scholar of the 13th century, a friar famous for his learning, a man some already half believed to be a magician. And they said the emperor paid for it a truly staggering sum of gold, 600 ducats, the old accounts murmur, a fortune, enough to buy a fine house spent on a single book no one could read. Now, I must tell you softly, as I always will, when a story is more legend than fact, that we cannot be sure any of this is true. That the great friar wrote it is almost certainly a lovely fiction, the kind of grand name a hopeful seller attaches to a mysterious object to raise its price. And whether the emperor truly paid that golden sum, or whether the tale simply grew in the telling, we cannot say. But this at least we can trust. By the early 1600s, the book was real. It was in Central Europe, and men of learning already believed it held some great and hidden meaning worth a fortune to possess. The riddle was already old, you see, even then. From the emperor's court, the book began to travel through gentler, quieter hands. It passed to a man who tended the emperor's gardens and cared for such curiosities, and from him, in time, to others. And here, in these years, we meet the first of the puzzled readers, the men who held the book and truly, earnestly, tried to make it speak. There was a physician in Prague who came to own it and who wrote his name into it, the one clear, readable name the whole manuscript contains, ghosting faintly at the edge of a page. And when he could make nothing of the looping script himself, he did what a curious man of his age would do. He sent word to the most learned man he could think of. Far away in Rome, there lived a brilliant scholar, a Jesuit, a man of astonishing range, who had set himself the task of decoding the ancient picture writing of Egypt, and who was reputed to be able to read anything in any tongue, living or dead. So they sent him a few carefully copied pages, and with them a hopeful, almost pleading letter. Surely you can unlock this. Across the miles and the years, the correspondence went back and forth. The great scholar in Rome received the pages. He was, it seems, intrigued. He may even, at some point, have come to own the whole book himself. But he never read it. The cleverest decoder in all of Europe, the man who believed he had cracked the riddle of the pyramids, looked upon those Lupin letters, and they defeated him too, as gently and completely as they defeat us tonight. And with that quiet failure, the book slipped once more into the shadows, carried, we believe, into the keeping of the scholar's religious order, shelved somewhere in Italy, and there it settled down to sleep for another 200 years. Rest a moment on that image, my friend. A book that even an emperor's gold could not translate, and even the age's greatest mind could not read. Already, you see, it had begun to earn its reputation, not as a book to be understood, but as a book that quietly humbles everyone who tries. And so the book slept. Through the 1600s and into the 1700s and beyond, it lay quietly in the libraries of a religious order in Italy, tucked among thousands upon thousands of other volumes, gathering the soft gray dust of long years. The emperor who had prized it was long dead. The scholars who had puzzled over it were long dead. The very story of what it was and where it had come from faded from memory until almost no one living knew that the strange, unreadable book existed at all. It became, once more, simply an object on a shelf, one of the countless quiet books that outlive everyone who ever loved them. And there it might have stayed forever, my friend, unread and unremembered, had the world not turned in a way that shook it loose. For in time there came upheaval, and the great collections of old libraries were gathered up and moved for safekeeping, and quiet arrangements were made. The sort of arrangements that happen behind closed doors when an institution needs to raise funds without drawing too much attention. And among a batch of old volumes offered discreetly for sale in the year 1912 in a villa near Rome, our sleeping book finally passed into the hands of the man who would give it his name. He was a bookseller, but that plain word does him no justice, for he was one of the great book hunters of his age. His name was Wilfrid Voynich, and he had led a life stranger than most novels. Born in lands of the old Russian Empire, he had in his youth been a revolutionary, arrested for his beliefs and sent away in chains to the frozen wastes of Siberia. He had escaped across half a continent by his own telling, and made his way at last to London, penniless, knowing scarcely a word of English. And there, of all the trades in the world, he had built himself a new life among old books, becoming a dealer of rare and precious volumes, prowling the crumbling libraries of Europe for treasures that others had overlooked. You can imagine then the moment. This man, who had a hunter's eye for the extraordinary, turning over a stack of dim old manuscripts in a shadowed villa, and coming upon one whose pages made him stop. The looping, unreadable script, the impossible flowers, the little bathing figures, the rings of stars. He would have known at once, with a collector's shiver, that he was holding something without equal, a book that posed a riddle no one had ever solved. He bought it, and from that day it carried his name into our modern age, the Voynich Manuscript. For the rest of his life, Wilfrid Voynich was in love with his mysterious book and utterly determined to unlock it. He believed with all his heart that it was the work of that famous 13th century friar, the grand old legend from the emperor's court, which Voynich took up and cherished and tried mightily to prove. He carried the manuscript across the ocean to America. He showed it to the greatest scholars he could find. He had photographs made of every page and sent them out to any learned mind that might succeed where others had failed. He gave lectures. He wrote of it. He poured years of hope into it. And in all that time, for all that love and labor, he never read a word of it either. He died still not knowing what his own book said. The man whose very name we now speak whenever we speak of it, and who never once learned its secret. After him, the book passed to those he left behind, and then, in time, to a bookseller once more, and at last it came to rest where it lies to this very night, in the quiet, climate-guarded, rare book library of a great American university, cataloged and numbered and protected, and still, after all its long travels, still entirely unread. Think of that journey, my friend, as you lie there in the warm dark, from an unknown hand in medieval Europe to an emperor's cabinet of wonders, to a scholar in Rome, to 200 years of dust, to a Siberian exile turned London book hunter across an ocean and into a modern vault. Kings and geniuses and adventurers all passing this small, quiet book from hand to hand down 6 centuries. And not one of them, not a single one, ever able to read it. Rest now. When you are ready, we will sit with the Codebreakers, the clever, patient men and women who took up the challenge in our own time, armed with all the sharp new tools of the modern mind, and who met, every one of them, the same gentle wall. The fire is low now, my friend, just embers and a soft red glow. This is the quietest part of the night. Let me finish the tale gently. Now, we come to our own age and to the cleverest readers of all, and I will tell you their story softly. For though it is a story of failure, it is a kind and gentle failure, and there is nothing in it to trouble your rest. You see, when Wilfred Voynich carried his book into the modern world and sent his photographs out across it, he set a challenge before a new kind of mind. Not the astrologers and alchemists of old, but the Codebreakers, men and women who had learned to unravel secret writing as a science, who could take a page of meaningless seeming symbols and, by patience and cunning and arithmetic, coax the hidden message out into the light. These were people who broke codes for a living, and one after another they turned their gaze upon the little book of looping letters, certain that they at last would be the one to make it speak. Among the first was a distinguished scholar who studied old philosophy, a man of great confidence, who announced before an audience of learned peers that he had cracked it, that the book was the secret diary of that famous medieval friar, written in a clever cipher which he alone had unraveled. For a while the world believed him, but when other scholars examined his method, the solution dissolved in their hands like mist, for it turned out that his cipher was so loose and so forgiving that a patient man could squeeze almost any message he wished out of those symbols. He had not read the book. He had only heard, in its silence, the echo of what he already hoped to find. And that, my friend, is a lesson the manuscript teaches again and again. It is a mirror as much as a riddle, and the eager reader too often sees only their own reflection. Then came the war years, the great wars of the last century, and with them a golden age of code breaking. Brilliant minds were gathered in secret rooms, and they performed something close to miracles, unraveling the war codes of great nations, machines, and ciphers of fearsome complexity, saving countless lives with nothing but paper, pencil, and the sheer force of their thinking. These were, perhaps, the finest code breakers the world had ever produced. And when the guns fell silent, some of them, for pleasure, turned to the Voynich. There was one in particular, a celebrated American code breaker, a man who had broken some of the hardest ciphers of the war, who took up the manuscript almost as a hobby, gathering other clever friends around him to study it together in their evenings. For years they labored over it, these people who had defeated the secret machines of empires. They counted its symbols, charted its patterns, tested theory after theory. And do you know what they found? They found that the writing behaves strangely. It is not simple gibberish. It is too orderly for that. The symbols follow rules and repeat in patterns and rise and fall across the pages in ways that feel eerily like a true language, as though real meaning must surely be hiding just beneath. And yet, no key would fit the lock. No cipher they tried unlocked it. The great wartime code breaker studied it on and off for decades. And at the end of his long life, this man who had cracked the unbreakable confessed gently that he had failed. He had come to believe it might be written in some strange invented language, but he could not prove it, and he could not read it. He set it down unsolved. And so it has gone, all the way to our own present day. The scholars have newer tools now, great thinking machines that can count every symbol in the book in the blink of an eye and sift its patterns in ways no human mind could manage. Every few years, someone announces with fresh excitement that the riddle is solved at last, that the book is written in this old tongue, or that lost language, or this clever code. And every time, the wider world of scholars examines the claim and finds it does not quite hold, and the book slips gently free once more, still unread. 600 years, my friend. Emperors and Jesuits and revolutionaries, philosophers and the finest codebreakers who ever lived, and now the tireless machines of our own age. And the little book on my high shelf has quietly turned them all away, asking nothing, promising nothing, keeping its silence as softly and completely as it ever has. And so we come to the last chapter and to the gentlest question of all. What is it? After everything, after all these hands and all these years, what do we truly believe this book to be? There are, my friend, 3 quiet answers, and I will lay them side by side for you like 3 smooth stones, and we will not choose between them, for no one truly can. The first answer, the coldest one, is that it means nothing at all, that it is a hoax, that someone, long ago, sat down and filled 200 pages with beautiful, careful, deliberate nonsense, inventing an alphabet and a stream of flowing gibberish, perhaps to sell to a wealthy collector, perhaps to a wonder-loving emperor with 600 gold ducats to spend. It is possible. And yet, those who hold this view must explain why the nonsense is so orderly, why it follows the subtle rules that real language follows, patterns so delicate that some believe they would have been almost impossible to fake by a medieval hand with no thinking machines to help. It is a strange sort of nonsense, if nonsense it is. The second answer is that it is a cipher, a real message in a real language hidden behind a clever code, that somewhere beneath the looping letters lies ordinary meaning, a book of medicine perhaps, or a book of secrets someone wished to guard. This is the answer that has drawn all the code breakers, generation after generation, And it is the answer that has broken every one of their hearts. For if it is a cipher, it is a better one than any other of its age, and it has held against minds that unlocked the war codes of nations. And the third answer, the one many now lean toward most gently, is that it is a language, but a lost one, or an invented one. Perhaps some forgotten tongue, written down by the last soul who knew it. Or perhaps a private language, dreamed up by a single mind, a devoted solitary person building their own whole world of words, page by page, for reasons that died with them. If that is so, then the book is not locked against us at all. It is simply the only door into a room where only one person ever lived, and that person is long, long gone and took the key with them into the quiet earth. Which is true, I do not know, my friend. No one knows. And I will tell you something. Now that the fire is low and you are nearly at rest, I have made my peace with not knowing, and I think perhaps you can too. For not every mystery is a lock waiting to be broken. Some are simply part of the shape of the world, like the depth of the sea or the far side of the stars. Things we may circle and wonder at and love without ever needing to conquer them. The little book on my shelf has outlasted the emperor who bought it and the geniuses who chased it and every confident soul who swore they had it solved. It will very likely outlast us too, and there is something not frightening in that, but strangely comforting. A small, patient object that keeps its own counsel and asks nothing of us but our wonder. It does not need to be read to be treasured. Perhaps, in the end, that is the truest thing a librarian can say of any book at all. And so we lay it to rest, gently, the way we lay all things to rest here by the fire. Let me close it now and feel the soft weight of it settle and carry it back up to its high, quiet shelf, where it will wait, as it has always waited, patient and unhurried and unafraid. 600 years it has kept its secret. It can keep it one more night. It can keep it while you sleep. Think, as you drift, of all the hands it has passed through. The unknown maker bent over fresh vellum by candlelight, the wonder-hungry emperor, the puzzled physician, the exile who loved it and gave it his name, the brilliant codebreakers in their evening rooms. Every one of them wondered, as you have wondered tonight. Every one of them turned these strange and lovely pages, and every one of them at last laid the book down and went to their rest, no wiser, but perhaps a little more at peace, having spent a while in the company of a beautiful, harmless mystery. That is all it asks of any of us, not to be solved, only to be wondered at for a little while and then set gently down. So set it down now, my dear friend. Let the questions loosen their hold. You do not need the answers tonight, not to this, not to anything. The fire is warm, the library is still, and the last of the candlelight is soft upon the shelves. Somewhere up above us in the quiet dark, a book that no one can read is keeping watch over your sleep, asking nothing, needing nothing. Simply there. Rest now. Let your breathing slow and slow and slower still. I will keep the fire. I will keep the book. I will keep watch over the long, quiet library while you sleep. Good night, my friend. Sleep well and dream of nothing at all.